Hello, it's been a while. How are you doing? I hope January was, great for you. For me, I got eye surgery recently, which is why I was away. And basically, right now, without these glasses, I have double vision, which is just great, as you can imagine. But anyway, that is not why I gathered you here today. I actually have a video for you, which is based on a random Reddit thread that I came across the other day called "What's the most underrated language learning tip that actually works?" And I was kind of starting to see the comments, and the responses were very interesting. And I thought, you know what, let's talk about it on YouTube, because apparently that's what I do. So I'm going to go through a few of them and talk about what I agree with, what I don't, and why. And all of this is coming from a language teacher and a polyglot who has learned languages the hard way, the slow way, and occasionally the stupid way. Anyway, enough chit chat. Let's get to it. So the first comment is from Giordano Pietrofiglio. Sorry, my reading is not great with those glasses. And he says, listen to the same podcasts over and over, read the same book 5 times, watch the same movies until you know everything. That's how you steal a language. Focusing on a single piece of media definitely has its benefits. Take a film, for example. If you've watched it multiple times, you already know the story inside out, so the meaning is clear. That makes the experience much less overwhelming because you can stop worrying about understanding what's going on and instead focus on the language itself. So that means that you can pay more attention to words you find useful or to recurring patterns or grammar concepts. On the flip side, it can get a bit boring because there's not much novelty. For obvious reasons, because you're watching or listening to the same thing for the 10th time in a row. So I wouldn't recommend this as your only way of learning a language, but it can definitely be a useful tool if used strategically. Second one by Yubuken. If you doom scroll on TikTok/Twitter, etc., manipulate your algorithm to only show content from your target language. In my case, my Instagram algorithm already shows me a lot of Japanese and Spanish memes, and I regularly pick up new words and expressions almost effortlessly while I'm scrolling, because I'm learning while having fun, essentially. Of course, the only thing I would say is that the quality of the input can vary a lot, especially with humor and the type of humor you will see in memes, because the language isn't always clean, if you will, or standard. But as a language teacher, I am definitely aware that language doesn't just exist in textbooks or perfectly curated dialogues in a film. And so being able to understand memes or understand that kind of wild language is also part of understanding a language and, to some extent, its culture. So, to be honest, I don't see any harm in using memes as a supplement to your language learning, as long as it's not the core of it, I guess. Next comment is by Agile Octopus 2306. And he says, doing something every single day, even if it's only for 5-10 minutes. This is probably one of the most repeated pieces of language learning advice, and honestly, it's repeated for a reason. Doing something every day, even for 5 or 10 minutes, helps you build a habit and keeps the language present in your mind. It also lowers the barrier to starting a language study session, when you feel like, oh, I don't want to do it. Getting started often gives you momentum. I actually made a video recently where I talk about this in more detail, and I will put the link in the description box below. And in that video, I basically explained that 10 minutes is great for low energy days, but of course it shouldn't be the goal every day, I don't think. On days when you have more energy, that time should naturally go up, because only doing 10 minutes a day will take you only so far in the long term. Of course, I'm not saying you should study for 3 hours, that's crazy, but 30 minutes or an hour on high energy days seems like the sweet spot for me. Next one by Lanky_refuse 4943. It's a bit of a long one, but let's go. Playing video games in the language you want to learn, armed with only a tutorial and/or a willingness to mine vocab like crazy. Mind you, it has to be a video game where you can go at your own pace, or this might not work that well. You'll at least learn a huge chunk of vocab, even if it's just niche stuff about swords, says someone who played Touken and Ambu in its native Japanese using this method before an English version existed. I don't know that game, but I don't think it's that relevant. But anyway, I think Playing video games in your target language can actually be really effective, especially if the game lets you go at your own pace. Games naturally encourage repetition, and if you're willing to stop and look things up, you can pick up a lot of vocabulary without it feeling like traditional study. However, the downside, as the comment suggests, is that the vocabulary can be very niche, depending on the game, of course, and it can also be overwhelming if the pace is too fast or the language too dense. Essentially, not every game would be suited for this. I would even add, in my opinion, I can't generalize, that for most games, this method will usually be more appropriate for high intermediate to advanced learners in most cases. Unless, of course, we are talking about games that are designed for language learners, but that's obviously another category of video games. And another thing that the comment didn't mention is that some games, especially online games, of course, have a voice chat. So that can be a great way as well to practice, providing that you can speak the language a little bit. For example, I play Fortnite quite often, and I get to speak Spanish, Portuguese, French, English, obviously, almost on a daily basis or whenever I log on. So yeah, that can be good for speaking practice. The other day I was thinking of something related to video games and language learning because I've started playing The Sims 4. And I feel like potentially The Sims 4 could be a really good video game to practice languages. I might make a video about it, but I need a bit more of like research and testing to see if it's potentially a valid way of learning a language. But, you know, that could work actually. Next one is from Puffin, I don't know, there's no vowels in the beginning. Throw caution to the wind and just use it. Talk to people, communicate, use whatever little scraps of language you have to connect with others. I think this advice is good, but in theory, I mean, using the language early on, even imperfectly, helps you build confidence, and it shows you that communication doesn't require perfection, which is a great thing, for sure. On top of that, real interactions teach you to adapt, improvise, and focus on meaning rather than correctness. Again, we love that. That said, this can be really intimidating, especially for beginners. If you have very little vocab and your grammar is a complete mess and it's all over the place, conversations can quickly become frustrating or be almost impossible because you just you're not equipped to have, you know, meaningful conversations. And I feel like most people, if not everyone, need more input before they feel ready to speak, because you can't really produce something you haven't heard extensively. So I'd say this advice works best when it's gradual. Using what you know is important, but you don't have to throw yourself into the deep end on day one. Next one is by King of the Horde, and he says, don't wait to be ready before you try and do something. Learn however you like, but from day one, go out there and grab the TV shows you want to watch, the books you want to read, and the people you want to talk to, and then force the language down to your level through whatever means at your disposal. I actually like this advice a lot because waiting to feel ready is one of the easiest ways to never start, essentially. That's why I agree that engaging with real content from day one, whether that's TV shows, books, or people, is important because it helps you connect the language to things you genuinely care about, which is hugely motivating. The risk, though, is overwhelm. If the gap between your level and the content is too big, it can quickly become frustrating rather than productive. So without some kind of support like subtitles, graded material, or any type of guidance maybe, it's quite easy to get lost. And I think that's what the comment was hinting at. So I'd say this works really well if you adapt the content to your level, instead of adapting yourself to the content. So start early by any means, but make it manageable. Okay, we'll do a final one. Sipapint says, speaking, especially to yourself. This one is interesting because it's true that speaking to yourself is low pressure and it's a great way to practice without fear of judgment. It helps with fluency, recall, and getting used to forming sentences in real time. But the limitation is that there's no feedback. So if you only ever talk to yourself, it's easy to reinforce mistakes or stick to very simple language. So while I wouldn't throw this advice completely out the window, I'd say it's often better replaced by speaking to AI, for example, if AI is your thing. I know it's a hot topic. We're not here for that. But potentially that could be a good option, because at least with AI, you'll get feedback and it's still low pressure because you're not speaking to a human being. All right, so that is all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed it. Feel free to let me know your thoughts about my thoughts and what you thought about the advice that were given in the Reddit thread. If people enjoy it enough, maybe I'll do a part 2. And if you've watched the video until the end, I'd like you to comment with a shocked emoji. So when people will look at the comment section, they'll be like, what's going on? All right, I will see you later. Bye-bye.